So my name is Sonia Bhalotra. I'm an economist working in Britain at the University of Essex, and I work mostly on gender, health and political economy. There's now considerable evidence that women's political representation is good for women and children. What is not clear is what the trade-off is. So in fact, since women are known to be in favor of increasing taxation, to expand public spending, in particular for health and education, there's this lurking suspicion that women are probably bad for economic growth, at least in the short term. So the study I'm going to discuss, we believe, is the first to try to assess this, to assess whether male or female politicians are better or worse for economic growth. Our main result is that constituencies led by women grow faster economically than constituencies led by men. Importantly, this is not the result of selection, which means it's accounting for our statistical method already accounts for the fact that constituencies which elect women are different from constituencies which elect men. We identified some factors that explain this result. Possibly the most outstanding of those was corruption. Women are less likely to be corrupt. We find the same result using two completely different measures of corruption. One is whether these legislators, when they were candidates contesting the election, had pending criminal charges. Under the Right to Information Act, all candidates for political office in India are required to submit a statement of their wealth and age and education, and also any pending criminal charges. So it turns out that of the legislators in the period we study, 10% of women had pending criminal charges when they contested, compared to 32% of men. So men are 3 times as likely as women to enter politics with a sort of potential criminal charge against them. But we used another measure because history may not matter. So we were interested in whether they actually practice corruption in office. Is there reasons such as electoral incentives or the ennobling power of office that people who enter with a criminal history may not actually act criminal in office? So we measured asset accumulation of the individual MLA in their term in office and found that men just grew richer much more, significantly more than women did. This again is a measure of rent-seeking behavior or corruption in office, validated and elaborated in a published paper by Ray Fisman and others in the JPE. We didn't want to stop with looking at corruption. We wanted to see not only what women do not do, but also what women do. So we analyzed a very massive road building program that the Prime Minister's funds. So it's federally funded. We thought this was an interesting choice for studying impacts of legislators on infrastructure because there is a role for the local politician in acquiring a road project for their village or constituency. We found that men and women were equally likely to get a road project. In other words, on average, they got the same number. However, we found a significantly higher rate of non-completion of road building projects in villages where the MLA was a man. So in simple terms, this tells you that women are more efficacious. We don't know why. It could be that they're more motivated to complete because they care, but it could also be what we identified earlier, that they are less corrupt, because often corruption gets in the way of completion of infrastructure projects. And in countries like India, everywhere, but especially in developing countries, roads, for example, are a major contributor to economic growth or enhanced activity. So I should say, as a sort of caveat, that our results emerge from a sample of elections in which men and women are in close competition already at the time of election. We do this because it helps us to obtain causal effects. So we know that what we pick up is on account of the behavior or the preferences of the legislator and not a reflection of the preferences of voters in their constituencies or some other characteristic of the constituency, such as the share of scheduled castes and tribes, or the pre-existing state of the road infrastructure, which might affect growth potential. So basically, we restrict it to a sample of what are called close elections. Therefore, our results may not be valid for the entire country. They may be, but they may not be. And it's really not possible to say whether they have external validity, because once we generalize, we lose this causal identification. However, on a more positive note, because we're able to uncover mechanisms which are behavioral, and some of which are reinforced by other research, including laboratory research, as being related to innate or inherent gender differences, we think that to the extent that what we find is backed by behavioral differences between men and women, it may generalize. So for example, if you look at data on criminality across the world, women are less likely to engage in criminality. And this could be, for example, because of an innate trait that lab evidence identifies, which is that they're more patient or less willing to take risk. One more thing I'd say about generalization is that the study was conducted in India, and the natural question is, looking forward, I guess we expect that the share of women will keep growing, that the economy will keep growing, and the question is whether this relationship between women's representation in politics and economic growth will also continue, whether it'll be stable. And my guess is it may be there, but it will not be stable. So one reason is that as economic development progresses, opportunities for corruption tend to decline. And so to the extent that women are doing better because they're less corrupt, if there are fewer opportunities for corruption, the male-female difference will tend to shrink.